Zarathak crouched beside the twisted wreckage of the prison transport, her triple-jointed legs folding beneath her like a waiting spider. The crash site still smoked 3 days after impact, filling the humid air of Kepler 438b with the acrid stench of burned metal and plasma coolant. Her 4 eyes moved independently, scanning the debris field while her heat-sensing organs detected the rapidly cooling signatures of the dead. 17 prisoners had been aboard the transport. 16 bodies lay scattered among the wreckage, their orange jumpsuits torn and bloodied from the crash. But the 17th was missing. The human was missing. Zarathak's mandibles clicked together in what her species considered amusement. In her 300 years of existence, she had never lost prey. Her success rate was perfect, just like every other member of the Velnari hunting caste. They were bred for this purpose, evolved for it, enhanced for it. Their reputation stretched across 47 star systems as the galaxy's most efficient predators. And now they wanted her to hunt down one escaped human. She activated her bioscanner, watching as data streams flowed across her retinal display. The human's genetic signature was already logged in the system. Marcus Chen, age 34, originally from Earth's North American continent, convicted of sedition against the Galactic Trade Authority. No military background, no survival training, no special skills listed in his file. Just another soft, pink-skinned human who would be back in custody within the day. The trail was laughably obvious. Broken branches marked where the human had crashed through the underbrush, fleeing in panic from the crash site. Deep footprints in the soft jungle soil showed he was carrying too much weight, probably supplies scavenged from the wreckage. Torn fabric hung from thorns where his prison uniform had snagged on the alien vegetation. Zarathak rose to her full 8-foot height and began following the trail at an easy lope. Her powerful legs, each ending in razor-sharp talons, carried her silently through the dense undergrowth. Unlike the clumsy human, she moved like liquid shadow, disturbing nothing in her passage. The jungle around her teemed with life. Bioluminescent fungi cast an eerie blue glow through the perpetual twilight beneath the canopy. Strange bird analogues called to each other with haunting melodies, while something large crashed through the trees overhead, shaking loose a shower of purple leaves. None of it concerned her. This world held no dangers for a Velnari hunter. Her natural armor could turn aside the claws of any predator on this moon. Her reflexes were faster than anything evolution had produced here. Her weapons could kill at ranges measured in kilometers. The human's trail led deeper into the jungle, following what might have once been a game path. Zarathak noted with professional interest how his footprints grew more irregular as exhaustion set in. The spacing between steps shortened. The depth varied as he stumbled more frequently. Good, fear and fatigue would make him careless. She paused at a stream where the human had stopped to drink and fill some kind of makeshift container. The mud showed clear impressions of his knees where he had knelt beside the water. Blood spots marked where flying insects had fed on his exposed skin. His scent lingered in the humid air, sharp with stress hormones and alien to this world. Across the stream, his trail continued up a steep slope. But now Zarathak noticed something interesting. The footprints were more controlled, more deliberate. The human was learning to place his feet more carefully, avoiding the loose stones that would have sent him sliding back down the hillside. She clicked her mandibles again. Adaptation was common among prey species. It rarely mattered. Her comm unit chirped softly. "Status report, Huntress," came the voice of Ship Commander Vexhill. "The trail is clear," Zarathak replied, not slowing her pace. "The human is perhaps 6 hours ahead of me. I estimate capture within 10 standard hours." "Excellent. The Trade Authority is eager to have their prisoner returned. They're offering a substantial bonus for quick resolution." "Understood." She closed the channel and continued climbing. At the top of the ridge, the human's trail intersected with what appeared to be an ancient road, long since overgrown but still visible as a slight depression through the forest floor. Smart choice, she admitted grudgingly. Following the old road would allow faster travel and leave fewer tracks. But it wouldn't matter. Her enhanced senses could detect his passage even on hard-packed earth. The residual heat of his footsteps was visible to her thermal organs. Skin cells and microscopic fibers from his clothing marked his path as clearly as paint to her bioscanner. The road wound through a section of forest where massive trees stretched impossibly high overhead, their trunks wider than starship hulls. Hanging vines created a maze of natural barriers, and Zarathak had to use her wrist-mounted plasma cutter several times to clear her path. The human had done the same, she noticed, but he had cut different vines, chosen different routes through the obstacles. At first she thought this was random, panicked pathfinding. Then she realized he was deliberately varying his route, never taking the most obvious path twice in a row. Interesting, but still futile. As the day wore on, she began to notice other changes in the human's behavior. His rest stops were shorter but more frequent. He was rationing his energy better, maintaining a steadier pace instead of alternating between exhausting sprints and lengthy breaks. More concerning, he had started covering his tracks. Not well, his attempts were clumsy and obvious to her trained senses. But the fact that he was trying showed a level of tactical thinking most prey never developed. The sun was setting by the time she reached his first overnight camp. He had chosen his spot well, tucked into a natural shelter formed by fallen logs and overhanging rocks. A small fire pit showed he had managed to start a flame, though he had been careful to use dry wood that produced little smoke. Zarathak examined the camp site with growing interest. The human had built a linta shelter, arranged stones around the fire pit to reflect heat, and even dug a small drainage channel to divert rainwater. These were not the actions of a panicked fugitive. Food scraps showed he had been eating some of the local vegetation. She ran the organic residues through her bioscanner and felt her first stirring of unease. 3 of the 4 plant species he had consumed were mildly toxic to most galactic species. Either the human was desperate enough to risk poisoning himself, or human biochemistry was more adaptable than the standard files indicated. As night fell, Zarathak activated her natural night vision and continued following the trail. The human scent was stronger now, less than 4 hours old. She was closing the distance rapidly. But something nagged at her as she moved through the darkened jungle. The human's trail was almost too easy to follow now. His footprint seemed deeper, more obvious. His scent stronger than it should be after so many days. She paused beside a tree where his scent was particularly concentrated and examined the bark more closely. Traces of fabric clung to the rough surface, along with what appeared to be skin cells and... Zarathak's eyes widened in recognition. The human had been deliberately rubbing against trees, leaving scent markers to strengthen his trail. He was making himself easier to track. Why would prey want to be found? Unless it was no longer prey. The realization hit her with the force of a plasma bolt. She spun around, all 4 eyes scanning the dark jungle, her heat sensors switching to maximum sensitivity. Behind her, perhaps 50 meters back along the trail, she detected a faint thermal signature, humanoid-sized, moving slowly through the underbrush, following her. For the past several kilometers, the human hadn't been fleeing. He had been leading her. Zarathak reached for her plasma rifle and found only empty air. She looked down in shock. Her weapon harness was intact, but the rifle was gone. Cut away so carefully she hadn't even felt it happen. A branch creaked overhead. She looked up just in time to see a dark shape dropping toward her, silhouetted against the stars. The human had made his first move. Zarathak rolled sideways as the human dropped from the tree, her razor-sharp reflexes saving her from what would have been a killing blow. She heard the whistle of something heavy cutting through the air where her head had been a moment before. She came up in a fighting crouch, her wrist-mounted blade extending with a soft snick of metal on metal. The human stood 10 feet away, breathing hard, clutching a makeshift spear tipped with her own plasma rifle's power core. The weapon would be useless now, drained of energy and converted into a primitive melee weapon. Clever and dangerous. "You cannot escape," she hissed, her mandibles clicking rapidly in aggression. "I am Velnari, I am evolved for hunting. You are soft, weak, slow." The human said nothing. In the dim starlight filtering through the canopy, she could see he had changed dramatically since the crash. His pale skin was now darkened with mud and vegetable dyes, providing camouflage. His prison uniform had been replaced with clothing woven from local plant fibers. Most unsettling of all, his eyes held none of the fear she expected to see. They circled each other slowly, predator and prey locked in an ancient dance. Zarathak's confidence began to return. Whatever tricks the human had learned, she was still 8 feet of armored muscle armed with natural weapons that could slice through steel. He was a mammal barely 6 feet tall with no claws, no fangs, no armor. She feinted left, then struck right with blinding speed. Her wrist blade should have opened him from throat to sternum. Instead, it met empty air. The human had somehow anticipated her move and dropped below her strike, sweeping her legs with his improvised spear. Zarathak stumbled but didn't fall, her superior balance keeping her upright. Impossible. No prey species could match Velnari reflexes. They separated again, circling. The human's chest rose and fell steadily, but he wasn't gasping for breath as he should be. Days of running through the jungle should have exhausted him. Instead, he seemed energized. "Your species," the human said quietly, speaking for the first time, "hunts from above. You drop on your prey from trees or elevated positions. That's why your legs are so powerful, why your center of gravity is so high." Zarathak felt a chill that had nothing to do with the jungle's night air. Prey wasn't supposed to analyze predators. It was supposed to run, to panic, to make the mistakes that led to capture. "But here's the thing about humans," he continued, shifting his grip on the spear. "We started as prey too. We spent millions of years being hunted by things bigger and stronger and faster than us. We learned to study our predators very carefully." She struck again, a lightning-fast thrust aimed at his center mass. Again he moved aside, but this time she was ready for his counterattack. Her left hand swept down to block his spear thrust, while her right brought the wrist blade around in a killing arc. The blade met the spear's shaft and bit deep into the makeshift weapon, but didn't break through. The human had reinforced it with strips of metal torn from the crashed transport, hidden beneath the wooden exterior. More than that, he had expected exactly this exchange. As her blade lodged in his weapon, he twisted it sharply, and the wrist blade snapped off at the base. Zarathak leaped backward, staring at her broken weapon in shock. Velnari wrist blades were forged from the finest combat alloys in the galaxy. They could cut through starship hull plating. "Stress fractures," the human explained conversationally. "I've been watching you use that blade for the past day. You favor your right hand, put all your strength behind downward cuts. The metal's been weakened by repeated impacts with the local vegetation. I just had to give it the right kind of torque at the moment of maximum stress." He had been studying her, learning her patterns, her weaknesses, her habits. Like a predator, Zarathak activated her emergency beacon, sending a distress signal to the orbiting ship. "This ends now," she snarled. "A recovery team will be here within the hour." "No," the human said calmly. "They won't." Her bioscanner chirped softly. No signal was reaching orbit. She looked down at the device in confusion. The display showed heavy interference from an unknown electromagnetic source. The human held up a small device cobbled together from transport wreckage. "Simple M pulse generator. I've been building it for 3 days. Your technology works really well until someone introduces a little chaos into the system." Zarathak felt something she hadn't experienced in centuries of hunting. Fear. Not the healthy wariness of a predator facing dangerous prey, but genuine primitive terror. This human was doing things no prey should be able to do. She launched herself forward in a desperate attack, abandoning technique for pure aggression. Her claws raked at his face, while her powerful legs drove her forward like a battering ram. The human moved like liquid, flowing around her attack and striking back with the butt of his spear. The blow caught her in the solar plexus, driving the air from her lungs. As she doubled over, he brought his knee up toward her face. Zarathak twisted aside, the knee strike missing by inches. She grabbed for his leg, intending to break it, but he spun away and backpedaled into the jungle. 7 days, he called back to her as he disappeared into the underbrush. "You've been hunting me for 7 days. Do you want to know what I was doing for the first 3? She said nothing, gasping for breath. "I was running," his voice echoed from the darkness. "Scared, confused, making every mistake in the book, but on the 4th day something occurred to me." Branches rustled nearby, but when she turned toward the sound, nothing was there. "I realized you weren't just hunting me, you were teaching me." Another sound from a different direction. He was circling her, staying just out of sight. "Every track you followed showed me how to hide tracks. Every mistake I made that you corrected taught me what not to do. Every night you let me stay ahead taught me how to survive in this jungle." Zarathak spun in place, trying to track his voice, but the sound seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You made me better," the human's voice continued, closer now. "You turned me into a hunter." "Humans don't hunt," she snarled into the darkness. You are prey species, soft, weak, helpless without your technology. Laughter drifted through the trees, cold and amused. Is that what your files tell you? Let me tell you what humans really are. The voice was directly behind her now. She spun around, claws extended. Nothing. We are the species that hunted megafauna to extinction with pointed sticks. We are the ones who turned wolves into pets and then bred them to be better killers. We spent 1,000,000 years chasing down animals that were bigger and stronger than us, running them to death across continents. Movement in the trees above. She looked up just as something dropped toward her again. This time she was ready. Her remaining wrist blade met the falling human spear in a shower of sparks. They locked weapons, straining against each other, her superior strength slowly forcing him back. Humans, he grunted, pushing against her blade, are pursuit predators. The spear broke. Zarathak's blade continued its arc, slashing across the human's chest. He cried out and stumbled backward, blood flowing from the wound. Finally, Zarathak pressed her attack, striking again and again with her natural claws. The human gave ground, retreating deeper into the jungle. But even as she pursued him, part of her mind registered something wrong. The wound was bleeding freely, but it wasn't deep enough to slow him down significantly. And his retreat seemed controlled, purposeful. He was still leading her somewhere. As they crashed through the undergrowth, branches whipping at her face, Zarathak realized the truth. The human hadn't been trying to kill her in their fight. He had been testing her, learning her capabilities just as she had unknowingly taught him during the hunt. The predator was still learning about its prey. And the chase was far from over. The human's blood trail led Zarathak through increasingly difficult terrain. Thorny undergrowth tore at her natural armor, and loose rocks threatened to turn each step into a fall. The wounded human somehow maintained his lead, moving through obstacles that should have slowed him to a crawl. Dawn was breaking by the time she realized she was climbing. The jungle floor had given way to rocky slopes covered in twisted scrub and razor-sharp grasses. Her breath came harder in the thinner air, and her usually perfect balance wavered on the unstable ground. Humans evolved in varied environments, she remembered from the species files. They adapted to everything from sea-level swamps to high mountain peaks. The Velnari had evolved in the deep forests of their homeworld. They were built for perfect terrain, controlled conditions, predictable environments. Here, she was out of her element. The blood trail stopped at a narrow ledge overlooking a deep ravine. Zarathak approached carefully, all her senses alert for another ambush. The rocky ground showed scuff marks where the human had pulled himself up, but no blood. She looked over the edge and saw him 20 feet below, standing on another ledge. The wound across his chest had been packed with some kind of plant material that had already stopped the bleeding. He looked up at her with those strange, calculating eyes. "Jump down," he called to her. "It's the only way to continue following me." Zarathak studied the drop, 20 feet to a narrow ledge with a 1,000-foot fall into the ravine if she missed. For a human, it would be suicide. For a Velnari with powerful legs and perfect balance, it should be simple. "Should be." "Afraid," the human taunted. "Your species profile says Velnari never retreat from prey." She knew it was a trap. Everything about this situation screamed danger. But backing down now would mean admitting defeat, something no Velnari had ever done. Zarathak crouched and leaped. Her jump was perfect, powerful legs launching her in a clean arc toward the ledge below. But as she fell, she saw the human's hand move to a piece of rope attached to the cliff face. He pulled, and the ledge beneath him swung away on concealed hinges. It wasn't a ledge, it was a trap. Zarathak slammed into the rocky wall where the false ledge had been. Her claws scrambled for purchase on the smooth stone as she slid toward the abyss. At the last second, her talons found a crack in the rock, and she arrested her fall, hanging by her fingertips over certain death. The human appeared above her, looking down from the real ledge hidden behind the fake one. "Did you know," he said conversationally, "that humans are one of the few species that can throw objects accurately? It's because we evolved to hunt with projectiles." Something small and hard bounced off her helmet, a stone thrown with precise aim. "We had to learn to judge distances perfectly," he continued, tossing another stone that struck her right hand. "Wind speed, trajectory, the way moving targets change position over time." More stones rained down, each one aimed at her grip points. Zarathak tried to climb, but the rock face was too smooth. She tried to swing to another handhold, but the human anticipated her movement and struck her reaching hand with another perfectly aimed throw. "The interesting thing about pursuit predators," he said, preparing another stone, "is that we don't just chase our prey until it gets tired. We chase it until it makes a mistake." He threw the stone harder this time, striking her left hand with enough force to numb her fingers. Her grip loosened. Like jumping into an obvious trap because your pride wouldn't let you walk away. Zarathak's left hand lost its hold on the rock. She swung wildly, supported now by only her right hand. The muscles in her arm burned with the strain of holding her full weight. "Here's the thing, though," the human said, his voice growing serious. "I don't actually want you dead." A rope dropped down beside her, thick and strong, woven from the same plant fibers as his clothing. "Humans are also tool users," he explained. "We're really good at making things that solve problems." Zarathak stared at the rope, her pride warring with her survival instinct. Taking help from prey was unthinkable, but the alternative was a very long fall. Her right hand was starting to slip. She grabbed the rope. The human hauled her up with surprising strength, muscles that had been softened by civilized living now hardened by days of jungle survival. When she reached the ledge, he stepped back and allowed her space to recover. "Why?" she gasped. "Because," the human said, settling down on a rock as if they were having a casual conversation, "I want you to understand something about my species before you go back to your ship and file your report." Zarathak remained crouched, ready to spring. But the human made no aggressive moves. He simply sat and watched her with those disturbingly intelligent eyes. "Your people think humans are prey," he continued. "Weak, soft, dependent on technology, and you're right to a point. We're not as strong as you, not as fast, not as well armed by nature." He gestured to the trap he had built, the false ledge now hanging uselessly from its rope hinges. "But we have something your species never developed, something that made us the dominant species on Earth despite being surrounded by things that could kill us." "What?" Zarathak found herself asking. "We cheat." The human stood and walked to the edge of the ravine, looking out over the jungle canopy spread below them. "Every other predator in the galaxy hunts fair. They rely on their natural advantages, speed, strength, claws, teeth, whatever evolution gave them. Even you, for all your technology and training, still fight like an animal. You use the tools you were born with." He turned back to her, and she saw something in his expression that made her blood run cold. "Humans gave up on fair about 2 million years ago. We learned to use tools to set traps, to work together, to think 10 steps ahead. We didn't get stronger, we made weapons. We didn't get faster, we domesticated animals that were. We didn't grow armor, we learned to forge it." The implications of his words were staggering. Zarathak had assumed the human's survival was luck, or perhaps some hidden genetic advantage. But he was describing something far more dangerous. "You adapted to your environment," she said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn. "No," the human corrected. "We adapted our environment to us, and when that wasn't enough, we learned to adapt ourselves to whatever we encountered." He gestured to his transformed appearance, his jury-rigged equipment, his intimate knowledge of a world he had seen for the first time a week ago. "7 days," he said. "It took me 7 days to learn everything I needed to know about this jungle, about you, about how to survive here. Not because I'm special, because I'm human." Zarathak felt a chill that had nothing to do with the high altitude. She was beginning to understand why the Trade Authority wanted this human captured so badly. If his species really could adapt this quickly to any environment, any threat. "The sedition charges," she said. "What did you actually do?" The human smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "I started teaching other species how to think like humans." Below them, the jungle stretched to the horizon, vast and green and full of possibilities. Somewhere out there was the crashed transport, the scene of the hunt that had started 7 days ago. But Zarathak was beginning to realize the hunt was far from over. If anything, it was just beginning. And she was no longer sure who the hunter really was. The human led her down a hidden path that wound through caves behind the waterfall cascading into the ravine. The tunnels were narrow and twisted, forcing Zarathak to crawl on her belly in places where the human moved easily. Her superior height and limb length, advantages in open terrain, became liabilities in the confined spaces. Your people made first contact with humans 50 years ago, the human said as they navigated the underground passages. His voice echoed strangely in the confined space. But you never bothered to study our history. You just looked at our current technology level and decided we were primitives. They emerged into a vast underground chamber lit by more of the bioluminescent fungi. But these had been cultivated, arranged in patterns that provided optimal lighting. Tools made from crashed transport components hung from the walls in organized arrays. Food supplies were stored in improvised containers, preserved with local plants that served as natural refrigerants. It was a complete base camp, hidden beneath the jungle floor. 7 days, Zarathak breathed. You built all this in 7 days. 3 days to build, 4 days to refine, the human corrected. Humans are very good at making homes in hostile environments. We've had a lot of practice. The chamber branched into multiple tunnels, each marked with symbols scratched into the rock. The human had created not just a shelter, but a network, a fortress. While you were tracking me above ground, he continued, settling down beside a small fire that vented its smoke through natural chimneys in the rock. I was mapping the entire cave system. These tunnels connect to 17 different surface exits spread across 40 square kilometers. Zarathak realized with growing horror that she had never been hunting the human at all. She had been wandering through an elaborate maze while he observed her from hidden vantage points, learning her patterns, studying her weaknesses. You could have escaped, she said. Any of those exits would have taken you far beyond my search area. Escape to where? The human asked. I'm on an alien world with no transportation, no way to contact my people, no hope of rescue. Running would just delay the inevitable. He poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks dancing toward the ceiling. So instead, I decided to change the rules of the game. A sound echoed from one of the tunnels, footsteps heavy and purposeful. Zarathak spun toward the noise, her remaining weapons ready. 3 figures emerged from the shadows, Velnari figures. Zarathak's mandibles clicked in confusion. The markings on their armor identified them as Hunter Prime Kexter and his hunting pack, the elite team that should have been orbiting overhead in the command ship. Greetings, Huntress, Kexter said, his voice carrying the formal tones of a superior addressing a subordinate. We received your distress beacon. That's impossible, Zarathak replied. The human disabled my communications. Oh, that little M-pulse device? The human's voice came from behind her. She spun around to find him still sitting calmly by the fire. I turned that off hours ago. Your beacon has been transmitting perfectly. Kexter and his pack moved into the chamber surrounding the fire, but something was wrong. Their movements were too stiff, too controlled, and their eyes. Their eyes held the same calculating intelligence she had seen in the human. The thing about persistence hunters, the human said conversationally, is that we don't just chase our prey until it gets tired. We chase it until it brings its entire herd within striking distance. Zarathak looked more carefully at the 3 Velnari warriors. Their armor was authentic, their weapons real. But subtle details were wrong. The way they held themselves, the rhythm of their breathing, the absence of the unconscious territorial posturing that dominated all Velnari interactions. Impossible, she whispered. You'd be surprised how much you can learn about a species by spending a week with one of them, the human replied. Especially when they're hunting you. Posture, movement patterns, vocal inflections, social hierarchies. Humans are very good at mimicking other species. One of the fake Velnari stepped forward. We have come to collect the prisoner, it said in perfect Hunter Prime accent. You will accompany us to the extraction point. Zarathak's mind raced. If these were humans disguised as Velnari, then where were the real Hunter Prime and his pack? As if reading her thoughts, the human by the fire smiled. They're safe, probably very confused and angry, but safe. Turns out your people sleep very deeply when exposed to certain atmospheric compounds. The jungle here produces some interesting biochemistry. You drugged them. I learned from them, he corrected. Just like I learned from you, the difference is they never knew I was there. The human stood and walked to one of the makeshift Velnari. Up close, Zarathak could see the elaborate disguise. Body suits that mimicked Velnari proportions. Mechanical systems that replicated their unique joint structure. Voice modulators that produced perfect accents. Humans are also very good at working together, he said. Something your people never learned to do effectively. You're all apex predators, which means you're all competitors. You cooperate when you must, but you don't truly collaborate. The implications were staggering, if humans could impersonate other species this effectively. The prison transport, Zarathak said with sudden understanding. You weren't really a prisoner. Oh, I was definitely a prisoner, the human replied. Just not for the reasons the trade authority claimed. I was part of a diplomatic mission that got a little too close to some uncomfortable truths about galactic economics. He gestured to his companions in their elaborate disguises. My team came to get me out. The crash was real. We didn't expect your people to respond so quickly to the rescue attempt. But once we realized you'd send a hunter instead of a full military force, we saw an opportunity. To do what? To prove a point about human capabilities. To show that we're not the harmless prey species the galaxy thinks we are. The false Kexter stepped forward again. The extraction begins now, Huntress. You will return to your ship and file your report. What report? Zarathak demanded. The real human smiled. That the prisoner died in the crash, that his body was destroyed by scavengers, that the hunt is over. I won't lie in an official report. You won't have to lie, he said. The Marcus Chen who was imprisoned by the trade authority really is dead. That man was broken, helpless, dependent on others for survival. He gestured to the sophisticated cave complex, the perfect disguises, the elaborate plan that had trapped an entire Velnari hunting pack. The person standing before you now is someone entirely different. Someone who knows exactly what humans are capable of when they're properly motivated. Zarathak felt the last pieces of the puzzle falling into place. This hadn't been a rescue mission. It had been a recruitment operation. You're building an army, she said. We're building a network, he corrected, of humans who know how to fight like humans instead of trying to be something else. The trade authority made a mistake when they started imprisoning human dissidents. They put us all in one place where we could plan together. He walked to the cave wall and pulled away a tarp, revealing a sophisticated communications array built from salvaged components. We've been in contact with resistance cells on 17 different worlds. Everything that happened here, every technique I used, every weakness I discovered in Velnari hunting methods, it's all being transmitted to human operatives across the galaxy. The terrible truth hit Zarathak like a physical blow. She hadn't just been hunting a single escaped prisoner. She had been providing training data for a galaxy-wide human insurgency. You used me, she said. I learned from you, he replied. Just like you inadvertently taught me during the hunt, the difference is I was conscious of what I was doing. The fake Velnari were preparing to leave, gathering equipment and extinguishing the fire. Soon they would return to the surface, board the orbiting ship, and disappear into space. And Zarathak would be left with an impossible choice. Report what had really happened and reveal the scope of human capabilities, or file the false report and allow the deception to continue. Either choice would change everything. As they prepared to leave the cave, the human turned back to her one final time. Here's the thing about persistence hunters, Huntress, he said. We don't just chase our prey until we catch it. We chase it until we understand it completely. His eyes met hers in the flickering light of the dying fire. And now we understand you. Zarathak stood alone in the empty cave system, the silence broken only by the distant sound of water dripping from stalactites. The humans had vanished as completely as smoke, leaving behind only cold ashes where their fire had burned and subtle scratches in the rock that might have been random marks or might have been a message she couldn't read. Above her, she knew the Velnari ship waited in orbit, expecting her return and the successful completion of her hunt. Ship Commander Vexhel would be eager to hear her report, to collect the trade authority's bonus for quick resolution, to add another perfect success to the hunting cast's unblemished record. She climbed through the cave system toward the surface, her mind churning with impossible choices. With each step upward, she felt the weight of what she had learned pressing down like the stone above her head. The humans had let her live. More than that, they had saved her life when she would have fallen into the ravine. The gesture should have been meaningless. Prey showing mercy to predator was simply another form of weakness. But the context made it something else entirely. They had shown her that humans understood mercy, strategy, and the long-term consequences of actions in ways her people did not. Zarathak emerged from the caves as the jungle's two suns reached their zenith, painting the forest canopy in shades of gold and emerald. Somewhere overhead, invisible beyond the atmospheric interference, her ship waited for contact. She activated her comm unit and heard the familiar crackle of ship-to-surface transmission. "Huntress Zarathak," came Vexhul's voice. "Report your status." For a long moment, she said nothing. The weight of species loyalty warred with the growing certainty that everything her people believed about humans was catastrophically wrong. "The human is dead," she heard herself say. "Excellent cause of death. Complications from the crash. The body was consumed by local scavengers. No remains recoverable." It wasn't technically a lie. Marcus Chen, the broken prisoner who had fled in panic from the crash site, really was dead. The person who had outmaneuvered her, who had turned her own hunt against her, who had demonstrated capabilities that redefined what it meant to be human, that was someone entirely different. "Unfortunate," Vexhul replied. "The trade authority was hoping for a live recovery, but a successful hunt is a successful hunt. Prepare for extraction." The transport beam engulfed her, and within moments she materialized on the ship's bridge. Vexhul stood before the main display, which showed a tactical overview of the jungle moon. No trace of human presence appeared on the sensors. "Your efficiency continues to impress," he said without turning around. 7 days to track and eliminate a target across 40 square kilometers of hostile terrain. The hunting cast's reputation remains intact. Zarathak said nothing as she filed her official report. The words appeared on the screen in standard Velnari hunting notation: target eliminated, mission parameters fulfilled, threat neutralized. All true from a certain perspective. As the ship prepared to depart, she found herself studying the sensor displays more carefully. The sophisticated detection equipment that could track a heated object across continents showed no sign of human presence anywhere on the moon's surface, which meant the humans had found ways to hide from Velnari technology. The implications were staggering. If they could evade the galaxy's most advanced hunting sensors, what other capabilities had they developed in secret? How many other primitive species had the galactic community underestimated? "Ship Commander," she said carefully, "I recommend increased surveillance of human colonies. Their adaptability may have been underestimated in our initial assessments." Vexhul finally turned to look at her, his 4 eyes studying her with professional interest. "You encountered unusual resistance." The human demonstrated unexpected resourcefulness. Nothing that affected mission success, but worth noting for future operations. It was another careful half-truth. The mission had succeeded, just not in the way anyone expected. "Noted," Vexhul replied. "I'll include your observations in the final report to the Trade Authority." As the ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving the jungle moon behind, Zarathak retreated to her quarters. She needed time to think, to process what she had learned, to decide what she was going to do with knowledge that could change the balance of power across the galaxy. Her personal comm unit chimed softly. A message waited in her private files, though the ship's sensors showed no record of any incoming transmissions. She opened the file. "Huntress," the message began in perfect written Velnari. "By the time you read this, we will be gone. You may be wondering how we delivered this message to your personal system without triggering ship security protocols." Zarathak felt her blood run cold. The humans had somehow penetrated her ship systems, accessed her personal files, and left a message, all without detection. "The answer is that we learned from watching you interact with your technology during the hunt. Humans are very good at understanding systems, even ones we've never seen before." She thought back over the past 7 days, trying to remember when the humans might have observed her using her equipment. The bioscanner, the comm unit, the various diagnostic tools she had employed while tracking their false trail. "We want you to understand something important. This message is not a threat. We have no interest in harming you or your people. But we needed you to know that human capabilities extend far beyond what your species' databases indicate." The message continued, outlining in precise detail every method Zarathak had used during the hunt, every weakness in Velnari tactics they had observed, every technological vulnerability they had identified. It was a complete tactical analysis of her species' most elite capabilities, written from the perspective of prey that had somehow become predator. You have a choice to make, Huntress. You can pretend this hunt went according to plan, file your report, and continue believing that humans are harmless prey species. Or you can prepare your people for the reality that we are something else entirely. The message included detailed technical specifications for improvements to Velnari hunting gear, tactical recommendations for countering human adaptive capabilities, and strategic assessments of potential future conflicts. We are not your enemy, the message concluded. But we are no longer your prey either. The galaxy is changing, Huntress. The only question is whether your people will adapt to the new reality or whether you will continue hunting phantoms while the real threats reorganize around you. It was signed with a simple human symbol, a stylized representation of two hands shaking in agreement. Zarathak stared at the message for a long time. Outside her quarters, the ship continued its journey through hyperspace, carrying news of another successful hunt back to Velnari Command. Soon the reports would filter through galactic intelligence networks, reinforcing the comfortable fiction that humans were weak, manageable, containable. But in her quarters, surrounded by the physical proof of human capabilities, Zarathak faced a terrible truth. Her people were walking blind into a conflict they didn't even know had started. She thought about the human who had saved her life after demonstrating he could have taken it at any time. About the sophisticated deception that had fooled an entire hunting pack. About the fact that even now, humans were spreading across the galaxy carrying knowledge they had gained by turning her hunt into a training exercise. 7 days ago, she had been the perfect predator hunting helpless prey. Now she was just another species, trying to figure out where humans fit in the galactic ecosystem. The hunt was over, but as Zarathak began to truly understand what had happened in that jungle, she realized that something much larger was just beginning. And this time, humanity would not be running.